Hello everybody, this is Refresh, and I'm here to bring you a battle between the 4 Throne of Eldraine Brawl decks and the Defeated God Challenge deck from Journey into Nyx. We are going to be playing 2 games against this challenge deck, first in normal difficulty with 3 Rollicking Throngs, and then we'll be playing in hard mode. For these battles, we will be using 3 hero cards. The first one is the Harvester. It says tap, draw a card, then discard a card. The Explorer, which says you may play an additional land on each of your turns. And the Vanquisher, which says your starting hand size is increased by 1, your maximum hand size is increased by 1. We will be playing with Brawl rules following a 2-player game, because we only have 1 opponent in the Defeated God Challenge deck, and we want to make sure that it's relatively fair. And we'll get started with 8 cards apiece. Syr Gwyn draws a Wintermoor Commander, Mortify, Plains, Embrath Shieldbreaker, Single Combat, Shining Armor, Windscarred Crag, and Plains. This is not a great hand because we don't have a black mana, and nothing else here is anything that we want, so we're actually going to mulligan this. Now we have a Bond of Discipline, Mace of the Valiant, Ancestral Blade, Corpse Knight, Silverwing Squadron, Bloodfell Caves, Foulmire Knight, and Integrity Intervention. 1 land is even worse, so we will mulligan this again. Now we have a D-Spark, Mountain, Smitten Swordmaster, Plains, Mace of the Valiant, Wintermoor Commander, Mortify, and Boros Guildgate. This hand is kind of like the first hand, but worse. And not wanting to go down to 5, we will keep this hand. We will take the D-Spark and we will put it on the bottom of the deck. Chulane, Teller of Tales, draws a Meteor Golem, Forest, Tranquil Cove, Forest, Simic Guildgate, Forest, Temple of Mystery, and Steelbane Hydra. This is all payoffs and no ramp, and so we cannot keep this hand. We will mulligan and try for a better hand. Now we have an Incubation Incongruity, a Blossoming Sands, Azorius Guildgate, Prison Realm, Runaway Together Command Tower, Evolving Wealth, and Biomancer's Familiar. This is not a great hand, but it is an acceptable one, so we will keep it. Korvold the Faker's King draws a Swamp, a Swamp, a Swamp, a Forest, an Orzhov Enforcer, a Swamp, and a Thor Mammoth. This is pretty bad. It's just being all lands. We're missing one of the colors, and we have a 2-drop and a 7-drop, so we're going to mulligan this. Now we have a Paradise Druid, Rhythm of the Wild, Chittering Witch, Goblin Cratermaker, Mountain, Rugged Highlands, Bloodsoaked Altar, and Golden Egg. We have 2 lands, and we can't even cast a Paradise Druid. We have to mulligan this again. We'll go down to 7. Now we have a Deathsprout, Forest, Arcade Signet, Keeper of Fables, Vindictive Vampire, Priest of the Forgotten Gods, and Evolution Sage. We only have 2 lands in 1 color. We can't keep this either. We'll go down to 6. Now we have Priest of the Forgotten Gods, Swamp, Judith the Scourge Diva, Sir Conrad, Keeper of Fables, Ingrath, Captain of Chaos, a Stomping Ground, and a Witch's Oven. We're still at 2 lands, so we're going to go down 5. Now we have an Evolution Sage, Orzhov Enforcer, Paradise Druid, Bloodfell Caves, Mountain, Moldavine Reclamation, Woodland Champion, and Gruul Guildgate. This is finally a hand that we can keep. We will do so. We'll take the Evolution Sage, we'll put it on the bottom. We'll take the Woodland Champion, we'll put it on the bottom. And we'll take the Moldavine Reclamation, we'll put that on the bottom. And we'll put the Moldavine Reclamation at the most bottom, followed by the Evolution Sage and the Woodland Champion. Alela, Artful Provocateur, draws a Law Mage's Binding, Plains, Winged Words, Angelic Exaltation, Temple of Silence, Sephara Sky's Blade, Orzhov Guildgate, and Dimir Guildgate. This is not a good hand because there's no action in it, and so we are going to mulligan it. Now we have a Island, Smothering Tithe, All That Glitters, Plains, Watergrave, Island, Scoured Barrens, and Tranquil Cove. We have no action and it's almost all lands, so we're going to have to mulligan this as well. Now we have a Dimir Guildgate, Prison Realm, Mace of the Valiant, Shambling Suit, Conclave Tribunal, Command Tower, Sephara Sky's Blade, and Plains. We're going to keep this one and go down to 7. We have 1 creature we can cast and 3 lands. I guess this is tolerable. We'll put the Prison Realm at the bottom. Turn 1, we'll draw. Syr Gwyn draws a Mask of Immolation. We will play the Boros Guildgate tapped and the Plains. Chulane will play the Blossoming Sands tapped and the Azorius Guildgate tapped. We'll gain 1 life when the Blossoming Sands enters the battlefield, taking us to 26. We'll also draw a card, We drew a forest. Korvold draws, gets a Savvy Hunter, will play the Gruul Guildgate tapped and the Bloodfill Caves tapped. When Bloodfill Caves enters the battlefield, we'll gain a life, we'll go up to 27. Alela draws, gets a Dismal Backwater. We will play the Dismal Backwater tapped and the Dimir Guildgate tapped. We'll gain 1 life and go up to 28. We'll pass to Xenagos. Now, if Xenagos should play a card that will kill us this turn, then we will mulligan that card, but just for this first turn only. Xenagos plays a Dance of Panic. It is an enchantment. As long as 5 or more Revelers are on the battlefield, all Revelers have haste and attack each turn of Fable. We also get a Rip to Pieces. At the beginning of combat this turn, each Reveler deals 1 damage to each player and each creature those players control. We have 3 Revelers and 4 players, so we will take a total of 12 damage from the Revelers. There are no creatures to lose, so we'll go down to 16. At the end of Xenagos' turn, we'll use the Harvester. Gwyn will draw an Ancestral Blade, and we will discard the Mask of Immolation. Chulane will draw a Gyre Engineer, and we will discard the Incubation Incongruity. Korvold will draw a Krenko Street Kingpin, and then we will discard Krenko Street Kingpin. Alela will draw a Mana Geode, and then we will discard Sephara Sky's Blade. We'll untap. We'll draw. Gwyn draws a Plains. Chulane draws a Leaf Kindred. Korvold draws a Thorn Mammoth. Alela draws an Arcane Signet. Gwyn will play the Mountain and the Plains. Then Gwyn will tap 3 to play the Mace of the Valiant. This is an artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each charge counter on Mace of the Valiant and has Vigilance. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a charge counter on Mace of the Valiant. Chulane will play the Command Tower in the Forest. We'll tap these for green and blue. And we'll play the Biomancer's Familiar. This is a 2/2 mutant. Activated abilities of creatures you control cost 2 less to activate. This effect can reduce the amount of mana an ability costs to activate less than 1 mana. And then you can tap it. The next time a target creature adapts this turn, it adapts as though it had no +1/+1 counters on it. We'll also tap the other 2 and play Leafkin Druid. This is 0/3 Elemental Druid. You can tap it to add green. If you control 4 or more creatures, add green instead. Korvold will play a Mountain. We'll tap the Bloodfell Caves for black, the Gruul Guildgate for green, and tap the Mountain. And then we'll play a Savvy Hunter. This is a 3/3 Human Warrior. It says whenever Savvy Hunter attacks or blocks, create a food token, and then you can sacrifice 2 foods to draw a card. Alela will play the Command Tower and the Plains. We'll spend 2 mana to play the Arcane Signet. This is an artifact, and it says tap, add 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity. Then we'll tap all 3 of these to play the Mana Geode. This is a artifact. It says when Mana Geode enters the battlefield, scry 1, middle scry. We take the Smothering Tithe and we put it on the bottom of the deck. And then you can tap it to add 1 mana of any color. We don't have much we can do because our first hands were really bad, and so we will pass it off to Xenagos, who will cast the top 2 cards. The first one is Xenagos' Strike. We'll take 4 damage for each player, and we will die. That is it for us. Well, this went really poorly. I think mulliganing really badly multiple times really hurt these decks. We'll be back for hard mode, and hopefully we'll draw better. We are back for hard mode. We'll start with 8 cards apiece. Gwyn draws an Embereth Shieldbreaker, Swamp, Inspiring Veteran, Sky Knight Vanguard, Integrity Intervention, Embereth Skyblazer, Mountain, and Response Resurgence. We can't play this without any white mana, and so we are going to mulligan this. Now we draw an Inspiring Veteran, Boros Guildgate, Swamp, Godless Shrine, Command Tower, Icon of Ancestry, Mask of Immolation, and Rakdos Guildgate. This is not a good hand because it's all lands, but I'm going to keep this and hope that we can use the Harvester to draw something that's not a land. Chulane draws an Island District Guide, Forest, Simic Guildgate, Forbidding Spirit, Temple of Mystery, and Azorius Guildgate. This is not a good hand. We can't cast the Forbidding Spirit. I guess we can cast a District Guide, all lands, but we're going to keep this because we could possibly cast something eventually, and I guess that's the best we can do. Korvold draws a Blood-Soaked Altar, Swamp, Evolution Sage, Sir Conrad the Grim, Vindictive Vampire, Rakdos Guildgate, Thrashing Brontodon, and Arcane Signet. This is not enough land, so we're going to have to mulligan this. Korvold draws Judith the Scourge Diva, Rugged Highland Stomping Ground, Witch's Oven, Swamp, Rhythm of the Wild, Ingrath Captain of Chaos, and Sir Conrad the Grim. This is not a very good hand, but we will keep it because, we can eventually cast something. Alela draws a Prison Realm, Swamp, Chemist's Insight, All That Glitters, Workshop Elders, Golden Egg, Frogify, and Swamp. We only have 2 mana of a color that none of the other cards are in, so we're going to mulligan this. Now we draw a Guild Globe, All That Glitters, Heraldic Banner, Empyrean Eagle, Kaya's Wrath, Tranquil Cove, Evolving Wilds, and Mace of the Valiant. We still only have 2 lands, so we can't keep this either. We'll mulligan down to 7. Now we have Mace of the Valiant, Empyrean Eagle, Swamp, Watery Grave, Tranquil Cove, Swamp, Ancestral Blade, and Azorius Guildgate. This is really high in lands, but I think we have to keep this. So we'll take a Swamp and put it at the bottom. We'll start with Gwyn. She'll draw a Knight of the Ebon Legion. We'll play the Command Tower, and then we'll play the Godless Shrine. The Godless Shrine is a land, plane, swamp, and as it enters the battlefield, you may pay 2 life. If you don't, it enters the battlefield tapped. We'll go ahead and pay the 2 life. Chulane draws, gets an Incubation Incongruity, and then we will play the Temple of Mystery and the Simic Guildgate, both tapped. When the Temple of Mystery enters the battlefield, scry 1. We'll scry. We'll take the island and put it at the bottom. Korvold draws a Mayhem Devil. We will take the Rugged Highlands and we'll play it tapped, and we'll play the Swamp. We'll tap the Swamp. We'll play the Witch's Oven. This is a artifact that says tap, sacrifice a creature, create a food token. If the sacrificed creature's toughness was 4 or greater, create 2 food instead. Alela will draw. She gets a Swamp, and then we will play the Watery Grave tapped and the Tranquil Cove tapped. When the Tranquil Cove enters the battlefield, we'll gain 1 life. We'll go to 26. Syr Gwyn will tap Command Tower for red, the Godless Shrine for white. We'll play the Inspired Veteran. This is a 2/2 human knight. Other knights you control get +1/+1. And then we'll pass to Xenagos. Xenagos will cast the top 2 cards. The first one is Maddening Orade. As long as 5 or more revelers on the battlefield, Maddening Orade attacks each turn if able. She's a 4/2 Nymph Reveler. There are 5 revelers on the battlefield, so Orade is going to attack. And we also have a Wild Mayonnaise, which is a 3/1 first strike human reveler. And we'll put that on the battlefield. We'll go to combat. The Madden Orade is definitely going to attack. It is a 4/2. I think we're just going to take the 4 for now and go to 22. At the end of the turn, we'll use the Harvester. Gwyn draws a Sky Knight Legionnaire. We'll discard the Mask of Immolation. Chulane draws a Gyre Engineer. We'll discard the Incubation Incongruity. Korvold draws a Swamp. We'll discard Ingrath, Captain of Chaos. Alela draws a Guild Globe, and we'll discard the Guild Globe. We'll untap. We'll draw. Syr Gwyn draws a Crystal Slipper. Chulane draws a Fairy Formation. Korvold draws a Woodland Champion. Alela draws a Blood-Soaked Altar. Gwyn will play the Boros Guildgate tapped, and we'll play the Swamp. We'll tap the Command Tower for red, the Godless Shrine for white, and the Swamp. We'll play the Sky Knight Legionnaire. This is a 2/2 human knight with flying and haste. Because of the veteran, it is now 3/3. Chulane will play the Forest of the Azorius Guildgate tapped. We'll tap these 3 and play the Gyre Engineer. It is a 1/1 Vidalcan Wizard, and you can tap it to add green and blue. Korvold will play the Stomping Ground tapped and play the Swamp. We'll tap the Rugged Highlands for red, the Swamp, and play the Mayhem Devil. This is a 3/3 Devil. Whenever a player sacrifices a permanent, Mayhem Devil deals 1 damage to any target. Alela will play an Azorius Guildgate tapped and a Swamp. We'll tap these 3 manas, and we will play the Empyrean Eagle. We'll attack with the Sky Knight Legionnaire into one of the Rollicking Throngs to kill it. Rollicking Throng goes down, and then we'll pass to Xenagos. Xenagos will cast the top 2 cards. The first one is an Ecstatic Piper. It's a 2/2 Satyr Reveler. When it enters the battlefield, as Xenagos Ascended attacks this turn if able. He'll also cast Xenagos' Scorn. Xenagos Ascended gains Trample until end of turn attacks his turn if able. This should be untapped, and then because there are 5 Revelers, we're going to be attacked by the Madden Orade and Xenagos Ascended. We'll trade the Empyrean Eagle for the Madden Orade. The Empyrean Eagle dies. The Madden Orade dies. We'll gain 3 life per player, so that's a total of 12 life, but we'll lose 6 life from Xenagos, so we'll gain a total of 6 life to go back up to 28. At the end of Xenagos' turn, we'll use the Harvester. Gwyn draws a Tournament Grounds. We'll discard the Crystal Slipper. Chulane draws a Sulhana Wayfinder. We'll discard the Sulhana Wayfinder. Korvold draws a Priest of the Forgotten Gods. We will discard the Woodland Champion. Alela draws a Emergence Zone. We'll discard the Blood-Soaked Altar. We'll untap. Gwyn will draw, gets a Bloodfell Caves. Chulane draws, gets a Plains. Korvold draws, gets an Arcane Signet. Alela draws, gets a Dismal Backwater. Gwyn will play the Bloodfell Caves tap. When it enters the battlefield, will gain 1 life and go up to 29. We'll also play the Tournament Grounds. This says tap, add colorless, or tap, add red, white, and black. Spend this mana only to cast a Knight or Equipment spell. We'll spend these 3 mana to cast Icon of Ancestry. This is an artifact. It says, as Icon of Ancestry enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Creatures you control of the chosen type get +1/+1. We'll choose Knight. And then you can spend 3, look at the top 3 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card of the chosen type from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. This makes all of our knights +1/+1, so the Legionnaire is a 4/2 and the Veteran is a 3/3. We'll also tap the Tournament Ground for black and we'll play the Knight of the Ebon Legion. This is a 1/2 Vampire Knight. For 2 and a black, the Knight of the Ebon Legion gets +3/+3 and gains Death Touch until end of turn. At the beginning of your end step, if the player lost 4 or more life this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Knight of the Ebon Legion. This is now a 3/4. Chulane will play a Plains and an Island. Chulane will then spend 5 mana to play Chulane. Chulane is a 2/4 human druid with Vigilance. Whenever you cast a creature spell, draw a card, and then you may play a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. We will tap the Gyre Engineer and the Island. For 3 mana, we'll play the District Guide. This is a 2/2 Elf Scout. When District Guide enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a basic land card or a gate card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and shuffle your library. We will search our library for a gate card. We found the Selesnya Guildgate. We'll put that into our hand. We'll shuffle. Because we cast a creature spell, we'll draw a card, and then we can put a card onto the battlefield tapped. We'll play the Blossoming Sands tapped. We'll gain a life and go up to 30. We'll spend both of the Swamp Manas to play the Arcane Signet. Then we'll tap these 3. And we'll play Rhythm of the Wild. This is an enchantment. It says creature spells you control can't be countered. Non-token creatures you control have Riot. Alela will play the Dismal Backwater tap. When it enters the battlefield, we'll gain 1 life to go to 31. We'll also play a Swamp. And then we'll spend 4 mana to cast Alela, Artful Provocateur. She is a 2/3 Fairy Warlock with Flying, Death Touch, and Lifelink. Other creatures you control with Flying get +1/+0. Whenever you cast an artifact or enchantment spell, create a 1/1 blue fairy creature token with Flying. We'll go to combat. The Skylight Legionnaire will attack the Wild Mayonnaise. The Inspiring Veteran will attack one of the Rollicking Throngs. The Mayhem Devil will also attack a Rollicking Throng. This will kill 2 Rollicking Throngs and the Wild Mayonnaise. Wild Mayonnaise, when it leaves the battlefield, each player gains 3 life, so we'll gain another 12 life to go up to 43. And then we'll pass the turn to Xenagos. Xenagos untaps. Xenagos will cast the first 2 cards. We have an Impulsive Charge. At the beginning of combat this turn, all Revelers gain haste until end of turn and attack this combat at Fable. And then we have a Ferrous Band Revelers. It's a 4/4 Centaur Reveler. When it leaves the battlefield, each player draws a card. We're going to be attacked by the Ecstatic Piper, the Ferrous Band Revelers, and the Rollicking Throng. We will block the Ecstatic Piper with a 3/4 Ebon Legion. We'll block the Ecstatic Piper with Alela. That'll get us 2 more life. And we'll just take 4 from the Ferrous Band Revelers. We'll go to 41. And then the Rollicking Throng and the Ecstatic Piper will die. When the Ecstatic Piper leaves the battlefield, each player gains 2 life. So we'll gain another 8 life to go up to 49. At the end of the turn, we'll use the Harvester. Syr Gwyn draws a Filemire Knight. We'll pitch the Rakdos Guildgate. Chulane draws an Endraise Forerunners, and we will discard the Forbidding Spirit. Korvold draws an Orzhov Enforcer. We will discard Priest of the Forgotten Gods. Alela draws a Shimmer Dragon. We will discard the Emergence Zone. We'll untap. Gwyn draws a Bond of Discipline. Chulane draws a Keeper of Fables. Korvold draws a Taste of Death. Alela draws a Command Tower. Gwyn will tap all the mana and cast herself. She's a 5/5 human knight with vigilance and menace. Whenever an equipped creature you control attacks, you draw a card and you lose 1 life. Equipment you control have equipped knight 0. Chulane will play the Celestial Guildgate tapped. We'll play the island. We'll tap 5. And we will play the Keeper of Fables. This is a 4/5 cat. Whenever one or more non-human creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, draw a card. Because we cast a creature spell, we'll draw a card. It's a Hallowed Fountain. And because we have Chulane, we can play it from our hand. So we'll play it from our hand onto the battlefield tapped. And then we'll tap 5 more. And we'll play the Fairy Formation. This is a 5/4 flyer. And for 3 and a blue, you can create a 1/1 blue fairy creature token with flying and then draw a card. Because we cast another spell, we'll draw a card. We get a Paradise Druid. Korvold will spend 5 mana and play Syr Gwyn the Grim. It's a 5/4 legendary human knight. Whenever another creature dies or a creature is put into a graveyard from anywhere other than the battlefield or a creature leaves your graveyard, Syr Gwyn the Grim deals 1 damage to each opponent. You can tap 1 and a black, and each player puts the top card of their library in their graveyard. With Alela, she'll play the Command Tower. She'll tap 3 mana, and she'll play the Mace of the Valiant. We have to do these triggers in the right order. We're casting this now. This creates a fairy with Alela. And then Mace of the Valiant will enter the battlefield. And then we'll spend 2 more mana to cast Ancestral Blade. This is equipment. When it enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 white soldier creature token and then attach Ancestral Blade to it. If equipped creature gets +1/+1 and equip 1, this will create another fairy token. We'll use dice to keep track of the number of fairies. And then we'll play the Ancestral Blade. We'll create a 1/1 token that the Ancestral Blade is attached to. And then we'll put a charge counter on Mace of the Valiant. We'll go to combat. We'll attack the Ferris Band Revelers with the Sky Knight Legionnaire, and they'll trade. The Sky Knight Legionnaire dies, the Ferris Band Revelers dies. Each player will draw a card. Gwyn draws a Plains. We'll play the Plains. Chulane draws a Firemine Vessel. Korvold draws a Thrashing Brontodon. Alela draws a Shambling Suit. We'll pass the turn to Xenagos. Xenagos will cast the top 2 cards. The first card is a Madden Oreade. We've seen this before. And then the second card is Xenagos' Scorn. Xenagos Ascended will attack this turn because he is able. We'll go ahead and eat all the damage and go down to 53. At the end of the turn, we'll use the Harvester. Syr Gwyn will draw a Corpse Knight. We'll discard the Bond of Discipline. Chulane will draw a Risen Reef, and we will discard the Firemind Vessel. Korvold will draw a Rapacious Dragon, and we will discard the Taste of Death. Alela will draw a Golden Egg, and we'll discard the Golden Egg. We'll untap. Gwyn draws a Mountain. Chulane draws a Thornwood Falls. Korvold draws a Mountain. Alela draws a Plains. Gwyn will tap a black, a colorless, and a white. And we'll play the Profane Insight. This is an instant adventure. When you draw a card and you lose 1 life, we'll exile the Falmar Knight. Lose 1 life to go to 42. We'll draw a card. This is a Sky Knight Vanguard. And then we will tap 2 mana and play the Corpse Knight, tap another 2 mana, and play the Sky Knight Vanguard. These are all buffed by both the Icon and the Inspiring Veteran. Chulane will spend 3 mana and play the Risen Reef. This is a 1/1 creature elemental. Whenever Risen Reef or another elemental enters the battlefield under your control, look at the top card of your library. If the land card, you may put that onto the battlefield tapped. If you don't put the card onto the battlefield, put it into your hand. Since we cast a creature, we will do the draw from the cast trigger first. We draw a forest, and we can put a land onto the battlefield using the trigger. We'll put the Thornwood Falls onto the battlefield tapped, and then Risen Reef trigger happens. We'll take a look at this card. It is a Leafkin Druid. We'll put it into our hand, and then we will spend 2 mana, and we'll play the Leafkin Druid, which will trigger the Risen Reef, which will also trigger Chulane. This will trigger Chulane. We'll take a look at the top card and draw it. It's a Fairy Vandal. Then we can put a land from our hand into the battlefield. This will be this forest right here. And then that triggers the Risen Reef. We'll take a look at the top card. It's a Plains. We'll put it onto the battlefield tapped. And then we'll follow up with a Fairy Vandal. We'll play this. We'll play it onto the battlefield. Because we cast it, we'll draw a card. It's a Biomancer's Familiar. and this will put a counter on the Fairy Vandal, which is a 1/2 Fairy Rogue with flash and flying. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Fairy Vandal. We don't have any more lands to put onto the battlefield this turn, but we will play another Biomancer's Familiar, and then we'll draw a card. Because of Chulane, we draw planes, we'll put it onto the battlefield. And then we'll tap the Gyre Engineer for 2 more mana. We'll play the Paradise Druid. The same thing happens. It's a 2/1 Elf Druid, and it has hexproof as long as it's untapped. You can tap it to add mana of any color. We'll draw a card, put the planes on the battlefield. Korvold will play the Mountain, and then we will tap 5 to play the Rapacious Dragon. It's a 3/3 flyer. When Rapacious Dragon enters the battlefield, create 2 treasure tokens. Here's 1, here's 2, and we'll put a +1/+1 counter on it because it has Riot. Alela will tap 6 and play the Shimmer Dragon. This is a 5/6 dragon with flying. As long as you control 4 or more artifacts, it has hexproof. You can tap 2 untapped artifacts you control to draw a card. Go ahead and tap both the Mace and the Blade to draw a card. We've drawn an Arcane Signet. We can play the planes. We'll tap the planes and the command tower to play the Arcane Signet. This will cause us to get another fairy. We'll go to combat. The Keeper of Fables will hit the Madden Oreade. The Madden Oreade will die, and then we'll draw a card from the Keeper of Fables ability. It's a forest, and then we'll gain 12 life. That'll take us to 54. And then we will pass the turn to Xenagos. Xenagos untaps, Xenagos draws, gets a Rollicking Throng. When Rollicking Throng enters the battlefield, reveal the top card of Xenagos' library, and Xenagos casts that card. So this was a free spell. It's an Ecstatic Piper. That means Xenagos is attacking. And then we get an Impulsive Destruction. Each player may sacrifice an artifact or enchantment. Impulsive Destruction deals 3 damage to each player that didn't sacrifice this way. If we won't sacrifice, we have all the life in the world. So we'll go ahead and take 12 damage first to go down to 43. And then Xenagos will attack. We'll take all that to go down to 37. At the end of the turn, we'll use the Harvester. Syr Gwyn draws a Sir Conrad the Grim. We'll discard the Mountain. Korvold draws a Frilled Mystic. We'll discard the Forest. Korvold draws a Forest. We'll discard the Orzhov Enforcer. Alela draws a Plains. We'll discard the Plains. We'll untap. Gwyn draws, gets a Steel Claw Lance. Chulane draws, gets a Plains. Korvold draws, gets Bacon to a Pie. Alela draws, gets a Plains. I think we can win this now, so we'll go ahead and attack the Ecstatic Piper with the Keeper of Fables. We'll attack the Rollicking Throng with Syr Gwyn. This will kill them both. We'll gain 8 life. We'll go back up to 45. Chulane draws a card. It's an Incubation Druid. Korvold will play the Forest, and now that Xenagos is vulnerable, we'll tap 4 mana, and we'll play Bacon to a Pie. It says destroy target creature, create a food token. We'll create the food token, but Xenagos will die because there's no other Revelers, and the Brawl decks will defeat a god on hard mode somehow. Let me know what your thoughts were about this game. I know that there are a lot of cards on this board, and so there is a good chance that I probably missed some triggers here and there. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. If you'd like to see more of these videos, you can hit subscribe. This was Refresh. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.